Yeah, so the second project is the making of enterprising subjects. Basically, over a number of years now, we've seen an increase of entrepreneurship departments, programs, centers in post-secondary institutions. And these spaces have been defined as ideal for educating future citizens. So I need to briefly say what I'm not doing before I can explain what I am doing in this project. So I'm not interested in looking at whether we need more of these programs. I'm not interested in looking at whether these programs are in fact creating entrepreneurs, so students, if they in fact are becoming entrepreneurs. I'm interested in looking at the meaning of the current context. How is entrepreneurship taught? What is taught? So I'm interested in the social construction of entrepreneurship and the production of enterprising subjects or citizens. And entrepreneurship has often been defined or talked about in very neutral ways, disregarding issues of power and inequality. So I pay attention to subtexts, race, class, gender in the social construction of entrepreneurship. So in terms of methodology, I focused on two post-secondary institutions in Canada. And really in terms of data, looked at texts, variety of texts, entrepreneurship texts, popular media articles and resources as well. For instance, Dragon's Den, Shark's Tank, those are all tools used in teaching. I also did observations in classrooms, did 40 interviews with students and 10 interviews with faculty from both institutions. In terms of findings, so I did an analysis of texts, preliminary, so beginnings of it, and also started to do an analysis of the narratives from students. And some interesting things have been revealed from students. First, in terms of their decision to major in entrepreneurship, it was either because some wanted to start a business, or the other kind of interesting thing, entrepreneurship was seen as providing them with a sense of freedom and versatility for the labor market. So transitioning, so really interesting ways in which their ideas of what entrepreneurship could bring them in the labor market. They also saw entrepreneurship as improving the Canadian economy and as being the catalyst for creating jobs. I think a few things that need to be thought of a bit critically that emerged from the narratives. One, entrepreneurship is not solely associated as an individualistic endeavor, but was defined as something for the greater good of Canada, of the world. I just think we need to think about that critically. Number two, a lot of them felt that in order to be good entrepreneurs, they had to do a lot of self-work. And I think that's interesting as well, the kind of self-work that is required for you to be an ideal, good entrepreneur. Number three, a lot of them talked about entrepreneurship as going against the grain, as being the lone person who's doing something different. But in delving more into what that actually meant, they were actually still working within the confines of capitalism and not really challenging it in very critical ways. And number four, participation, as I said earlier, in entrepreneurship allowed for the perception of a sort of better prepared entry into the labor market. So it is interesting for youth today what they believe entrepreneurship can bring to them, can do for them, which is not being answered elsewhere in our society. So those are some interesting findings. So I think there are three things that are significant. The first, it would be worthwhile institutionally in post-secondary institutions in regards to entrepreneurship programs to expand curriculum to reflect the diversity, the complexity, and the rich history of entrepreneurship as I know it. And so currently it's very limited in terms of what is taught and how it's taught. So expanding that would allow students to have a much more critical understanding of what entrepreneurship is and what it's done for various people and communities. And number two, I think it's important to start changing the larger conversation around entrepreneurship, challenging ideas around what success is, what innovation is, also our relationship to money and capital. And so I think that curriculum needs to change in that way. And the third point, in terms of significance, this project for me is revealing quite a bit about youth and their understandings, preoccupations around the labor market. It's revealing a great deal about their fears, their expectations. And so I think we need to be paying attention to what they think they will get and how they think they should be better prepared. And this project, focusing on entrepreneurship, has revealed a great deal in terms of that. And so governments need to be thinking about what we're promising, but also what are their needs? And is entrepreneurship really meeting that need for them? So in terms of this project, there's still a lot more for me to do in terms of, more analysis in terms of texts. Delving into right now, I find this idea of innovation really interesting and how that's sort of conceptualized. Also a lot of popular media, sort of shows, and games, Dragon's Den, so I'd like to explore that a bit more and their use in curriculum. And lastly, also I've noticed business competitions, locally, provincially, nationally, are huge, and students feel a great need to partake and are really invested in these competitions. And so that will be a separate piece to look at that in more depth. But if you want to learn more about this project, please have a look at the Sociology Department website. There's more information there.